Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we've got quite unusual photograph to work from. It's of one of the wild trees, one of the blossoms, which should be coming out anytime now. The plant called Blackthorn. You will see it's little white flowers and lovely slender branches. I think it's also might be called the almond tree, wild almond. But correct me if I'm wrong there. So the focus of today will be to look for what could stay in focus, maybe some of our flowers and leaves, some of the parts of the branches, and what could be out of focus, the same kind of, but more distant branches and flowers, and part of our woodland. So quite an exciting task for us for today. I'm using a violet background, so I mixed white, ochre, and violet, but from acrylic paints. And I ended up with a darker version, but if you would have had a slightly lighter one, that's fine. So anything between medium to darker tone is good. So we can work into the depths of the brown. Sometimes we don't have to apply so much darks then. And on my palette, I have white, yellow, ochre, magenta, violet. So these are my warm colors. And I have some olive green. That's quite yellowish green for me. Emerald green. And I put some cerulean. We might need a little bit of ultramarine, but at the moment I think we might not, so we can always edit later. I have my range of filbert brushes as usual, and I also have a round synthetic brush for sketching. So let's start with the sketching, and I'm going to use some tubes here first, and I'm going to use my oils later on. So let's load our brush with some paler violet color, probably violet and ochre, similar color we've been sketching with. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of white, some ochre, okay, and a little bit of violet. So I just want, that's probably similar color to what I just had. Just want to have a slightly lighter version of it. It doesn't have to be whitish. If you made quite a light background or medium background, you can use slightly darker color as well. As long as you can see the lines, just going to test it out. Maybe a tiny bit more darker, so it's not too doesn't appear too whitish against the surface. We want to see it, but not overly light. Right. So what I'd like us to do. I'd like us to sketch our branch. There's quite complexity going on because there are loads of other branches at the back. So the key, I think, directions will be this one coming from the left and then going down, and then the branching. I'm sorry, I picked up some paint here by accident. And then the branch goes towards the right, and then again slightly splits at the end. So let's find that one first. Now, feel free to move your branches about. For example, I don't want it to be perhaps too close to the edge. It's the whole kind of motif of the wild blossom gives me kind of a reference to some Chinese brush painting, to some Japanese painting. So I want to kind of follow a similar idea. So if I'll bring that branch a little bit more in, I'm going to use a thin line, but it doesn't mean that my branch is going to stay as thin as that. This is just direction of it. It's probably going to be darker branch as well later on. But that's going to be somewhere here. And then it actually breaks down and change the angle. Okay, so I can just amend that using a bit of tubes and tissue. So I want to stay fluent Okay, and the branch itself disappears somewhere down, but that junction is coming up somewhere, not quite halfway through the picture, but maybe a third, somewhere to get not too low, but somewhere we still can gain some height, maybe some little subjunctions. Yeah, so it's almost like a segment and a segment that stays there, and then it just branches off, perhaps a little that way. I'm going to try not to keep it too close, even the branch is finishing. And the photograph, it's almost touching the border. If we leave it out and kind of have our leaves somewhere in at the base, so then we have got more space, giving it a breathing kind of space, breathing room. Okay. I'd like us to plan a little bit of our flowers, at least in some scale. So looking at maybe those two, there is another two, there is a groups of threes here. That will be quite nice to work out some scaling and also decide if we need to move things about. Maybe I'll just move this one a little bit more further. So not a lot of details. But let's find the scale. So we have one flower. Just going to sketch it here. So the whole shape of the flower will probably fit in a circle if we look at the top. Okay, and by the look of it, it's 5 petals. So we've got kind of 5 shapes, probably somewhere like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And each petal has a wide, almost like an ear from a mouse, how we usually draw for the children cartoons. We've got a round oval shape, yeah, and then it just goes towards the point. So, and then if we look at that circle sideways, we might see, instead of a circle, we'll see an oval, okay? And our petals will come that way, okay? And if it goes flatter, yeah, it could just go that way. For example, I'm starting to look at the flower next to us. The center might be lower because we see some of the petals that way, and the lower petals we only see almost like their widths, yeah, sometimes there, and sometimes they open up, and in some flowers the center is quite high and it actually goes that way. So we really need to look what type of opening we have within a flower. So our top flower here actually has almost like a line. Our oval is turning to more of a very, very narrow circle, yeah? So all we see is the middle somewhere here. We see all the delicate stamens there. So I'm just making it quite decorative and simple. And then our petals just got that specific shape. I'll just place the darker mark. Okay, so, and that will be just the widths of what we see, that shape of the petals. Might see a little bit of something at the back, but not as much. It's something main. I'm just going to color it in. Just main kind of shape is going to be that way. Okay. So some flowers will have the petals coming up, and some flowers almost like bend out. So we need to look for where the center is in a flower, and then deciding which way the petal is going to go. So these are looking down petals, yeah, in comparison to perhaps that one. Okay. Or it might be in and out, kind of which inverting the shape. Okay, leaves are quite simple. We've got some quite narrow leaves, and we've got some round type of shapes, leaves. and some of them connect and become little groups. Okay. Again, we'll just observe them. Looks like most of the leaves are in pairs, unless it's just opening. We've got almost 3 here, unless it's from another branch, but most of them looking as twos. Okay. Right, so let's plan roughly the size of our flowers. So now I know what I'm doing, so I can simplify this flower to something like this. Yeah, I don't even have to do the stamens, but if I give myself an idea of the height, that might be a good planning. And I also would like to, I think that might be a good size. Let's just place it here and see how it feels. Okay, I don't want it to be too small. I can always make it smaller, but I'd like to exaggerate the sizes so we can actually have a focus on the flowers. I think it will do something like that. That would be good. So my oils, well, my tubes, allows the surface to stay reasonably dry, and the diluted paint also almost gives me a plan. Right, so it's not going to be too oily for my further painting. So if I roughly plan where this next flower is going to be, I'm just interested in the size of it. Yeah. And maybe these two, I'll have a little more attention to where's the center, maybe somewhere here. So I've got one petal, another petal, this one here, and probably then 2 at the back somewhere. Okay. So that would be enough planning. Okay, let's do some more flowers, but a little bit maybe quicker. If I'll just plan them as there's one here, or you can just use roughly strokes of the brush to give you an idea how big they're going to be. The 2 of them gives us an opportunity to practice, kind of to do some free strokes. So, but it's okay if you just do an outline of an oval and color it in. But if you use the width of the brush, it's a quick, effective approach. And when we start using thicker paint, it will also be really good for us in the long term. Right, just mixing some more paint here. Okay, this branch will have some more leaves. And let's check the direction. It's just looking tiny bit more down, which makes me want to put my branch here tiny bit more higher. I think that would be better. So that's why we're planning things now, so we can adjust things to your picture, okay? So I'm interested into those 2 directions, yeah? That direction is not overly parallel together. I'm still exaggerating the volume of the flowers, so then I can perhaps reduce the volume of other flowers lower. Okay, so if those 2 branches are going away from each other, the next branch looks like it's going a little bit more inwards. So let's put it roughly somewhere here and put it inwards from the previous one. Okay. There are loads of flowers here, but I think I might simplify to what I would like to see there. Quite like the flower at the bottom here. Maybe somewhere here. And perhaps a flower I'll drop a bit lower. What I like a little bud just open in a little round shape as well. And then we can put, I think some of the flowers lost their petals, but again, it's up to us if we want to do that or if we want to keep it more simplified. At the moment, I'm looking for the pattern of lighter shapes of our flowers. Yeah, maybe a leaf at the base of each branch will have the extra playfulness to that, and it gives that extra work. Yeah, so they leaning towards each other a bit more. These ones spreading a bit more further away. So what else we have here? We've got few flowers on this junction. Again, I might just move one of the flowers a little bit further to where it is, but I want to have it showing on the side. Some nice pointy leaves, perhaps here and there, and perhaps some of the, just a block of colors somewhere in this direction. If I'll make it a tiny bit lighter, so it dries lighter for you to see. I quite like the idea that my colors are drying slightly darker, because it means that I can work quite freely with some fresh colors. Might be another one there. Okay. It's more just showing which direction they turn in. Okay, so that's then quite a nice focus. Now the rest of the flowers on the left-hand side are more out of focus. However, I think if we were to put perhaps one flower, there's another branch coming out sideways here with some lovely narrow leaves, and perhaps on that area, if we were to place, you can pick up one of the flowers you already painted. You can decide which one you might want to use. I think I might just look at maybe those two again, but they will end up painting a little bit more different anyway. So one or two flowers, or a group of two, so kind of a group of what we can see in that corner. I think something like that would be good. Okay. I'm not going to draw the rest of the branches. If I wanted to add them later and have them quite softly done, we can do it as we paint. But so we can keep the composition. For now, I'm going to keep it. It's quite simplified. And another shape we'll go for is our distant tree, which split into two segments, almost like three, but I think that's just an open corner of the bark without the moss. So I'm going to use my olive green. Let me just see if I can see it on there. I can just about see it. Just some olive green. Or if you don't have olive green, use your emerald green and some ochre. And I want to draw the whole shape. Now, I want to draw, first of all, the gap between the two big shapes of the tree. It will help me with my composition as well. Now, my branch has already been moved in comparison to the photograph, so it's up to us where we want to have that opening done. I think somewhere here would be good. So if I wanted to paint some smaller flowers close here, that will work. Okay, maybe a little bit more steeper line here, and a little bit more shallower line this way. Okay. Just don't want any of our branches and tree lines clashing. Right, so for example, this tree could stop roughly somewhere here. Could have a little more character to it. Okay. And even lightly color it. I'm still using some tape, so it's not going to be overly oily, but it's more of a seeing the shapes. If you worry that the surface will be too oily, you can just keep the lines. Okay, and my other shape is probably somewhere here. Oh, tiny bit more wider. I want to have most of our white flowers being against the darker shapes of the tree. They will come out much more stronger in contrast, and that will be quite beautiful to see. The lower part of the tree is harder to find the definition where it stops. So don't be scared of, oh, where is it going to go? How far is it going to go? The color is changing there. We're kind of looking down on that tree, on that area. I think it's going to be just roughly somewhere stopping here, but there will be some other darknesses in this area. So what I might do for the moment, I might just paint it a little bit lower. So we see it more as a shape of a tree. Rather than lines. And we'll be painting the tree in such a way so we see it out of focus. So this will perhaps help us. Okay. I'm not coming too close to the flower, so I don't have to go in all the little gaps. It's more of an overall shape. And I might just stop somewhere here. So it's supposed to help you see the unity. If the color you're applying for the tree is stopping it, perhaps just wipe it off. Trying to simplify marks here. Okay, maybe something else. Lovely. I'm going to move on using a medium size filbert brush. And because we already identified where our lights for the flower is going to be, they're not the right tone. The tree is quite dark already, even with the green and what we can see from the background, more violet. So I'd like us to pay attention now to the background. And I'm looking for a range of violets, warm violets and cool violets. So I'm going to start using my oils. A stray mixture of oils here. And let's have some white mixed with violet. Okay. And what I'm going to do on my sample area. I'm just gonna put some range of different colors as I'm gonna be mixing this violet. So violet and a little bit of magenta. So these are looking a little more cooler violet. So I've got some red, but I'll explain in a moment longer, in a moment later, why they're looking cooler. It's got more that reddish, pinkish color. Okay, I can make it slightly darker, adding more violet and magenta together. So I want to play with color. Instead of boring browns, I want to see some beautiful colors which will go well together with my greens and whites. Okay, right, gonna put a little extra magenta into that and make it more pinkish rather than violet. Okay, tiny bit more of it. So I want to have a lovely, almost mosaic-like background full of varieties of colors. Okay, I think if I'll do it like that, you'll see better. Yes. I'll put something tiny behind it. That side of the board is reflecting more, so that's fixed. And now I can start adding tiny bit of ochre to my colors. Okay, so that will start being a bit more warmer. Okay, I can make it slightly lighter, so that's slightly darker, lighter version. It doesn't have to be these colors in particular order. I'm just mixing them as I'm going, and I'm just looking what type of colors I'm creating. They're slightly lighter, darker, but they're quite close together. For example, the last two, you can see the more difference, the change there. But overall, we'll have that small variety of pattern work of other flowers or light surfaces of lighter leaves reflecting on the ground. Okay, so let's add tiny bit more ochre. If I'll go just ochre directly quite quickly, it will be just very yellowish or dull yellow. Okay, that's okay, but maybe as yellow as I want to go. But now if I'll have more magenta and white, so most of our colors will have quite a bit of white today for the background, to have that pastel-y look. Yeah. What about if I'll just go violet and ochre with some white? So then that violet is no longer so fresh violet, but more, a little bit more neutralized. Yeah, if I were to put next to it somewhere here, we can see how different that is. So I think any variation of these colors will be wonderful to have. But we can break them into blocks and kind of work out a little bit of a plan for them. Now, if I were to squint my eyes by looking at the photograph and even lose more focus, if you're wearing glasses, sometimes just lifting the glasses is good. I can see just about this area. I'm looking at, not at the flowers, it's a bit more disrupted here with the flowers, but I can see the forest floor is a little bit lighter here. I think the tree trunks growing a bit more busier, darker corner somewhere here, kind of a little bit more into that last quarter of the picture. quite a lot of light, and it just gently goes darker towards the towards bottom of the painting. So I can go with any of my paler colors in that area. So if I'll go back to any of those earlier purple and white, magenta and purple and white, a tiny bit of ochre with all of these colors. So any of those colors would be fantastic. So violet and white. Just make sure it's light enough. I'm using reasonably thick paint. It's not super thick to make a distinctive relief on the surface, but it's not overly runny, but it's sort of smooth. It's our first coat, so if we need to work into that, that's why we try to keep the colors a little bit more paler. Now it starts looking very, very light. Because the background is so dark. I think I might just make it slightly darker, but it needs to remain light overall. If your background is a bit more paler, you probably will be, it will be easier for you to see the colors better. And we're not going to see the effect if it's working or not till the surface is painted. I'm going to paint partially over my leaves here, not too precious about them. I know where they're going to be. Just want to block that area. And I might just bring this color over a little here. What I don't want a perfect line going from one side to another one. So if it's a little bit up and down, or if it's happened more straight at the moment, later on bring it up and down. We want to lose that line. A little bit more of that color maybe somewhere here. Let's find some color for it. Maybe across. Okay. Trying not to come close to the flowers. Where I keep my flowers, I'm going to keep that area slightly darker deliberately, so the flowers will really pop up when we're ready for them. Let's have maybe a bit more magenta. Or any variations. It doesn't have to be anything overly specific. You can you can decide, as long as it's that range of colors, something lighter and darker. We decided where it's going to be lighter. All the rest variations will be quite optional. So I just want a little bit of that connecting pink. And I'm painting it, I'm doing the strokes one way, the other way. So they're quite chaotic in the sense of there is no specific structure to them. Will give us that more softer feel. So far, my colors are very blocky and flat. Later on, we'll have more of a broken, soft area. Okay, let's go a tiny bit more darker. More magenta and violet. Before I start using any ochres, just want to keep those two colors and their variation. I just want to test how some of the darker colors will go. Let's see if I'm lifting it up a little here. We'll stop the reflection. Sorry, have I dropped it? Yes. It should be a bit better. Okay, just connecting, just checking what these colors are going to be. Maybe some thinking towards distant trees. Try not to make anything too specific yet, too narrative yet. Just testing colors. Okay. Don't be scared of making the colors changing, a little bit reddish, a little bit more pinkish, tiny bit more darker if it comes out a bit more darker, tiny bit more lighter. Okay, well, I've got this color. I'll come around these leaves and just eat them away for the moment, so we see the shape a bit better. Okay. And we have that violety pink going across. Let's bring it a little bit somewhere below, just almost to balance it in color. Maybe some small quantities here. And in preparation for mingling it with other colors. It almost gives us a bit of a darkness at the top and perhaps a bit more diagonal shadow here, a little bit less darkness on one side, maybe a little extra darkness on the other side. Okay. So now we used mainly cooler versions of our colors, magenta, violet, a bit of extra white. Variations. Now let's start adding a bit of ochre. I think if I'll start with a darker version of this, of these color combinations, so I can touch up my shadows. Now it doesn't have to be very dark. If I just mix that color, that looks like a nice color for the tree trunk, but let's make it lighter for the background. Okay, that's better, I think. Let's test it again. That's it. So just varying the color more than, we don't need to change the tone yet. So let's fill some of these shapes. A little bit like painting by numbers now. I can place some extra strokes over my plainer violetish color here. Just want a bit more variety. If the paint mixed together, that would be really good. Painting over the stamens here, just coming a bit more close to the flowers, or even over the flowers. Not a big deal. It will be easier to paint the flowers after. So it starts having a bit of a haze of colors, yeah? A little bit more of a suggestive something now. And let's bring this paint over some of the earlier pink, some over the shadows. So they're starting mingling what's dark, what's light. At the same time, they're just a little bit blending here and there to give us that out of focus feel. Let's just do some more here as well. It's quite a nice color. And soften any of my lights. So I'm just distributing it a little bit here and there to balance the bold pinks and violets. Okay. And the paint is quite soft and easy to mingle. You know, when I've got the borders, just a little stroke. It's because I haven't applied a lot of thick paint. It's easy to mix it just in a smudgy way. It's not overwhelming it. Okay. Start having some atmosphere building up. Quite like this color. I think it's coming across in quite a lot of areas before we add others. I think that might be a good one. Might be something darker here as well. Okay. Then we can again go tiny bit more darker or tiny bit more light. I think I'll go tiny bit more darker first. So back to magenta and violet. If you want to go for some ochre, that's great. If you just keep in magenta and violet, might be more into the red. For me, it's coming out more into the red now. I want to keep to variety of color. Just gonna enter a few strokes quite playfully. So are they shapes from the forest floor? Are they patterns of light? I want to lose the edge of the tree shortly. Okay. So I'm gently blending, smudging these shapes together. A little bit more of that color, just to finish painting over the violet. If we don't see our background color, it's helped us to get where we are. We don't have to see it, but if we see it in little corners, that's brilliant as well. So don't feel like, oh, we prepped all that color, now it's no longer here. Why did we do it in the first place? It does help us building up the painting at the early stages, giving us that whole feel of the tones. Okay, so that's quite exciting. Still, I can feel a little bit of light going around the tree, something happening here. I'm quite happy with the shadows. And I'm ready to bring a little bit of light just to distribute it a little bit more further. Okay. So I've used my darker, warmer colors. Now let's go for some of these lighter ones. So far I've got one of the paler, cooler versions. So let's get some ochre with my color and extra white. Now it shouldn't be any lighter than what these colors are, maybe even tiny bit darker, so anything in between, but not lighter than it is. And again, we can vary it. It could have, let me just put a dab somewhere here, just connect it. That's quite nice. So a little bit of warmth, might just follow that color through. If it's a little bit sharp in some places and soft in others, that would be fantastic. We're looking for an idea of dazzling soft light, yeah, but forest floor got all sorts of things on it. We don't want to be too specific, but we're not realistic. We're not looking for every pattern there. We have a feel for it. So maybe some rounder strokes or some blending into the previous colors strokes. I don't want our eye stopping on them too much. I don't want the attention going to them. So I prefer partially soften them, and I'll keep the focus staying on beautiful flowers eventually. Okay, but I want to keep those lighter areas light. So if at some point they reduce in that light, so I can bring a little bit of paler version color. And I will vary the stroke slightly wider, slightly narrower, slightly more like a line. Yeah, might be something towards that branch. So I'm almost painting the background and planning shapes we're going to have on our branches. Maybe this looks like quite a continuous shape if I break it down a little bit. Okay, this is quite a sharp junction. Let's connect it here. Perhaps a little link of light, or just very soft. Yeah, so make those decisions within your painting. This is harder for you to follow. You've got an idea, but your work and how you mix the color will dictate where you might want to put those strokes. Stay brave, take creative risks. If you don't like something, maybe you can just blend it, and that might be enough. You might just do a little bit of extra smudging, and that will work there. You might end up bringing an extra color. That will be fine as well. Going to use some of this lighter tone semi-vertically, kind of creating some space perhaps for the trees at the back or for the light behind the distant trees. I think I prefer a little bit more cooler color there rather than too warm, so maybe a bit more violet but lighter version. Let's try that. That's good. And again, it's always that variety of color. Never be scared of variety. Okay, that looks too similar, so I don't like that. So I've got like a fork here. So let's keep one tree super narrow. That's almost gone. Okay, and then maybe this shape is stopping us, so we see wider tree and then a suggestion on a tree. That's quite nice. Quite like now this glow of light, so maybe we'll bring a little more violet to that. So violet and white. And I'm not moving the brush, I'm not even wiping the brush. So these colors are moving from one to another, to one to another. And I tend to top it up. Let's say if my paint is running out on ochre type of colors, then I'll fill it with some cooler colors, and then I can again soften it into the warmth when I'm ready. Okay, so that's might be another, maybe it's a tree, maybe it's a tree trunk, maybe bits of light suggesting that direction. Okay. I don't want to be too suggestive. I do quite like existing colors there. Maybe a tiny bit more lighter on this corner. Yeah, that's quite good. Maybe I'll do that as well. Very suggestive marks. That's lovely. It does show the feel of the trees at the back. So without painting a darker line, we slowly started to see the pattern of light as that positive space, or if you see in the darks as a negative space. Maybe a tiny bit more here. I'm looking now mainly at my picture rather than the photograph because I liked how it's come out here. I'm getting that suggestiveness further. If you liked how it stayed quite abstract, nothing wrong with keeping it very abstract and soft and not to have anything else. That's not a problem at all. Okay, I think that becomes too similar, so let's keep it more together. Okay, maybe something there. Good. And I'll do the little softness here as well. Very nice. Right, I might stop with that for the moment. And I'm ready to work on our tree. Right, now let's have a look at our colors for the tree. So similar to what we've done with our background colors, let's mix some greens. So I'm going to have a little bit of white, and I'm going to use my base color now, my olive green. Now, olive green has a lot of white in it already, so maybe I need to watch how much white I'm putting. White gives it more opaque feel, but if I were to put it straight away somewhere here, it's going to be almost like white. So there is a little bit of light on some of the mossy, quirky part of the bark, but that's going to be much, much more darker than my current color is. So let's always kind of compare to what you have on your, okay, that might be one. So if I place, I'm just gonna mix a little samples here first. So that color is a lightish tone. Okay, and I can see just a little bit of it. Might be just a bit too bold for the tree here, but it will show some of those imperfections and character. And I probably need only a little bit of it here. So while I have it on my brush, I think I'll put a little bit on here. And perhaps this side, kind of connecting it together with some of the light. And perhaps as it's coming round a little bit, I'm just exaggerating it, but it just, again, it just gives that movement of light. How do we connect it? And then I'll keep it away from this side because then we're going to have some leaves, and that will be quite nice and soft. Enough that sharpness. Okay. Right, let's go for a darker version of it again. Get a tiny bit of oil so it softens it. Okay, let's put it against here. Just a darker version. Okay, I can't see much difference. But if I'll add a tiny bit of emerald green. Now, emerald green will make our color much darker immediately, but it's not the color we want. So I'm going to add some ochre to that. It will make it lighter again. So again, I need to balance it, how much ultramarine I put to keep the color dark, but also neutralize it, kind of keep it warmer with the ochre. So that will be looking better. That's better darkness. Okay. So I'm going to bring some of that darkness. Okay, that's too greenish here. Right, if it's too green looking, maybe a dab of violet with this. It looks quite nice there, but doesn't quite work for me. I want it to appear as a tree trunk, not just as a greeny shape. So, okay, that looks quite dark, but let's place it against the painting and see what it appears like. I think we're somewhere there, but okay, maybe a little bit more light. A lighter version of it. Okay, that's a bit better. So there's a lovely mossy area here. I'm going to have to paint over this area of the flower. Okay, so I can then come back over it. My background color, my earlier wash, kind of a thin application of the green, is working really well with the color I want. So I might preserve it. However, if you had a lighter background, if you mix your green with slightly more violet to get that darkness, I think you'll be in the right track here. Right, this is quite pale, so I think I might need to come back to the dark area. I was talking too much and not focusing, but this lighter green could stay here. Well, medium looking green. And again, I'm just trying to follow the shape of the tree, maybe how the light is showing here. Maybe a little bit of that light will be somewhere here. Not forgetting that the leaves will be bold and green, so I can't be too much introducing the green. But I can bring it with some of my violets. There might be some earlier grasses and mosses elsewhere, but it's all out of focus, so bringing it across is exciting to see the colors through. Right, let's look at this section of the tree. Okay. And I'm looking for perhaps what's happening to the bark, how it's turning, trying to make creative strokes and looking for that light. Okay, so that my tree suddenly got some light on that on it. Okay. Can bring tiny bit of that light from myself somewhere here. I think it will be mingling with my pinks, but at the same time there is an extra color. Okay. And then I can go to some more brown looking colors. So if I'll use violet, so I haven't washed my brush, I'm just adding some violet and ochre, more violet than ochre. Okay, can make it green is coming out from my brush, so it just kind of again brings it all towards similar color. I'm looking for more of a browny purpley color, almost like a color we had for the background, or maybe darker version of it because I want to bring some shadows to my tree. Yes, that's kind of the color I mixed now to what I had earlier here. So I'm just going to bring some of these shadows back where I've overpainted it, perhaps. Maybe darken anything around, or keep it more thicker paint because the earlier paint was quite pale and not as effective on the surface, so I might just go around it. I've got loads of gaps here, so my flowers are reducing quite a lot, so don't be scared of that. We can still see them where they're roughly going to be. We can still see the rough widths. Okay, and I want to make something darker here close to the roots, so I might increase the violet and perhaps even violet green. I'll start with the violet first. That's quite nice darkness. Just sharpens the couple of areas, and we can soften some of it when we're ready. Want to create some tension on that tree. That tree is popping up towards us, but I will soften it gently as well. Okay. Very mossy type of tree. I wanted to put more brown in the middle of that tree, but how it's come out, I'm really liking it. So I think I'm going to keep it exactly as it is with the mosses. If you decided to put a little bit of light here, I think it might just break that shape into two trees. But I think I want to keep it as one big corner. Okay, that's good. And any of that violet again, diluted. That violet is working really well with my olive green here. And so on its extra sharpness of tones here. Okay, so almost painting around my flowers and then gently softening with the existing tree colors. My branch, as I'm coming close to it, is going to have a darker side and a lighter side. So if you wanted to paint close to it, maybe slightly darker, we can paint on the top, and then we can have tiny lighter tone on the base, sorry, behind the branch, will just be enough to help us afterwards. But even if you do it more even, it's be fine. We're overall building it up. Right, anywhere else? Darker violet. So I'm doing shape, where that violet is going, and then little details in that area. Okay, big shape. Okay, where's the details in the area? So the extra darker violet probably need to come here. Kind of semi halfway through the tree to make it the volume stronger. Also will give our flower support here when we come with light. Okay, I did like that one softer. I think I might just smudge it back. That's good. And we need slightly darker tone still here. And then finally that darker color, I want to kind of take towards some of the roots, so some of the kind of the lower shapes, how it links to the background, the forest floor. So perhaps taking it elsewhere, double checking if I haven't painted some of the surfaces, if that will benefit from it. So partially soften, partially we can see the strokes, whichever it will come out from under your brush. Might soften some of these ones in a moment. Really nice and steady, so you're not and if you put a stroke, you've got the moment to take it in. Can't really like that softness. I think this one needs softening. Once I wipe my brush, I think with a cleaner brush it will be easier for me to soften, but some extra darkness could come here. Is that the kind of close to us tree? Can we see its roots, what's in front of us? Nice and soft, quite suggestive. At any point, if it becomes too complicated, just look for a little more abstract, light and dark, and enjoy the color, than trying to reach out for something so complex. Yeah, what we can see, what we can't see. Okay, just gonna wipe my brush and touch up some of the earlier greens if I want a softer spread of that green. I want some softness for the shadow pink, so I might need to wash my brush completely. I'm just using the tips. Okay, so it's almost clean. And then with a drier brush, I almost like pick up some of the pink, or you even can just pick up a little bit of pink from the palette. So it's not loaded brush, but it has the power of smudging. Okay, that's quite a bit. And a little more oil rather than color. That's lovely. Hmm? I'll put it on the light somewhere here. Okay, good. And I also wanted to soften this border. So if I follow the tree trunk here on the side, got a sharp corner, which I don't mind here at all because I think all my flowers are going to be here and there. So that will be a little semi-focus there. Then it's tiny bit out of focus here. Part of it is not, so I can just gently soften that. And then top, I'll soften it as well. Yeah, becomes much more, yeah, suggestive. There is a border, but there isn't. Yeah, it's less strong. I just softened a tiny bit here as well. That's lovely. Again, that's lost and found edge a bit more here, and so is that. But that one is a bit more stronger. So again, let's just soften part of that. And again, tiny bit more sharper, maybe a bit more softer again. Okay. Maybe that's quite sharp border. So let's mingle it. So don't just go straight alongside of the curve of the tree, but sometimes go a little bit more diagonal, sometimes a little bit more inwards. So it's again lost. Is that the edge of the tree? Where is it? I remember seeing as a young teenager looking some of them impressionist work, Renoir, and it was fabulous to just observe. This is the edge of the face and the edge of the dress, and this is the corner, but there isn't a border. And I was just so fascinated. How do you do that? How do you paint something soft, but at the same time, it's not like a centimeter or an inch away, but that's how we work into that. We gently soften the contrast and we move it about. Okay. Right, next I'm picking up a small brush now, filbert brush. Flat brush is good as well, because I'd like to do some branches while we're using some of these violets and violet greens. I just pick up some fresh violet, tiny bit of emerald green. That will make it a little bit more black looking. So if we wanted anything dark, kind of bluish, we'll do that. But I do want to bring tiny bit of partially. I'm going to be mingling these colors and changing from one to another. And I'm going to bring some olive green as well. So olive green and violet. If you wanted to make extra dark emerald green. So let's start with some of the darker branches areas. So for this main one, it's almost like just find a little bit of sharpening of the branch, right? If it becomes super dark, immediately just add or a dab of white or a dab of ochre. So we don't want a line, we don't want a sharp line, we want that softness. We want the darkness, but we mainly want sharpness. Okay, tiny bit more darker here. So I'm going to be going through my branch and finding that probably will be lost and found within my tree shape, but I will more try to focus on finding it this time. So we've done all our vague shapes, or most of them. So let's find and define shapes a bit more. This come out quite nice. My lighter stroke giving me unintentionally quite a nice sharp light. I think it might be a bit too narrow light for me, but it's already a good start to what I want. So it's good to have our branch a little bit lost, more sharper, defined, okay? Mainly defined, but it's okay to lose it as well. So again, for this one, maybe this part of the branch is more in a shadow, so we'll see it more. Okay, there might be a group of flowers somewhere here, we'll see. I'll just leave a little bit of space for it. Or a little less clarity if we don't want to have too much. We're not too sure how the branches connect. Just keep it soft. Something happening there, but we don't have to know. I think the flowers here will will do all the joining part. Okay, I'll just soften this. Looks like a highlight under my branch, which I don't want to have. That's better. Same here, I don't want to have a highlight behind my branch. I want the highlight on top of my branch, so I'm just gonna get rid of that. All right, and let's keep going. Again, that will be a darker part of the shape. It's quite nicely. I left a little channel. I didn't paint the background over it, and it's quite dry in comparison to the rest oily surface. So that's quite nice to work with it as well. Okay, slightly something narrow, wider. Quite like this one to be slightly closer, so I can have another brush, and you can help yourself with checking, kind of connecting your strokes or narrowing down your branches, kind of helping yourself if you're struggling to do a specific line. There are other ways of doing it. Okay, back to a little bit of green and violet. Quite like that branch is getting lost, but I need to add slight width to it. So let's add the width first, and then okay, and then let's get it gently lost within my background. Maybe by placing a bit of extra light on it, so we can still see the width, but something is changing there. Okay. And I put some more flowers here, so let's improvise on another branch. Making it slightly darker because there will be flowers above, and that might give me the shadows, but again I'll tweak it as it's developing here. Okay, now I would like to add more branches, but at this stage, if I'll stay with the main shapes first, work into the flowers, and then make a decision what else we can add. Okay, quite like this branch going again darker, lighter. Yeah, I can still see it against my light, but it's not so pronounced. Maybe somewhere here it will be a bit lighter. No, I can't see the light there. Okay, maybe it will be a tiny bit darker. Okay, it's somewhere there. And then we have a couple of branches stretching out towards the flowers here. Now they are against the paint, that we can see them against the darkness. So if I'll use tiny bit of white and our lighter green, our olive green, if you need a little bit of white, and the violet is still there, but we're just looking for a lighter tone. We can have it a little bit more green, or a little bit more white, or a little bit more purpley color. So any of those variations will be wonderful.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
My branches keep disappearing into a light color. I can't seem to get the dark to stick.
Right, then the easiest thing to do is to have a smaller brush, hardly any oil on it, but mainly paint. So then you placing. So it means that your surface is quite soft, and it's harder to leave the line. So the chunkier the paint and less oilier the paint, the easier it will be. Also, the stiffer the brush is, the easier it will be for you to leave the mark, okay? If you have quite soft synthetic or medium synthetic brush in softness, that will be quite hard for you to do it.
Okay.
So, very valid question here. I think that pale or violet will work here for my branches. And I don't want to overwork them as well because I don't know exactly where my flowers are going to be here. So I'm giving it a hint. Okay, that's quite good. And I'll use maybe similar color for my highlight of the branch. That looks quite nice, but too perfect. So I want that variety. So it's good, the light could go not continuously, but have those little junctions. There will be imperfections where it stops, where it turns. Okay, can't see what's happening here. Let's paint the background. Another way of working here is drying, kind of rubbing out the surface close to the branch and not worrying that you kind of spoiling your background, but more or less wiping it off. So it's might be smudged colors and not so pretty colors, but it's much more workable surface. Painting your branches, working into your flowers when we get to the flowers, and then touching up a few strokes around the background. I think that might do the trick as well. Okay, that might be enough for me for the moment. And let's look at, so I've got an idea what's happening to that branch, but let's work with the flowers next. Just a little soften that whiteness. That light's a bit more disappearing. Very good. Right, next one, we need to find the right brush for our flowers. I have a mucky brush in front of me, which has a little bit of violet on it. So I might just use it just to check as though it's going to be big enough strokes. So the type of strokes we're looking at now with producing perhaps with a filbert brush. So we can just do one stroke as the soft synthetic brush we used to sketch the flowers will be harder for you to apply now because we have quite a lot of layers here and the bristles are long in comparison to the width of the brush. So it will be harder for you to be a bit more precise. So I think that's probably the width I'm interested in. So I think that's width of the brush is good for me. Maybe tiny bit small, but don't go too tiny. Right, so now I know the brush I'm going to be using. Let's wash it. So I just spotted I could do with a tiny bit lighter tone somewhere here. Okay, as I was just tweaking this corner. That's it. Right, so now I can wash it and load it with some white and cerulean blue, a hint of cerulean blue. And we'll test the color on painting to know if it's dark enough. Now we need to have an off-white color ready for the pure white to come in as well. Now I'm using cerulean blue because in comparison to some maybe lighter pinks or violets, so they're not going to get lost. We get creating extra, exaggerating extra contrast. So white first. I want the paint to be much thicker now than what I painted before. Tiny dab of blue. Probably will last me for quite a bit. It looks almost white on my palette, but I know it's not fresh white. Right, let's just try one. I'm going to try it on a larger flower so I can do a dab more in that area, so then I can paint it. I think that would be good. Okay. Now also, because we have quite a lot of darker background around our flowers, go with it. Allow some of the smudging to happen and create a little extra texture on our petals. So I quite like that effect already. There's a bit more light and a bit more darkness within a stroke, just because of the background flowers, paints. So allow it to happen. So maybe something narrow. I'm going to look out for my flowers and shapes. Okay, a bit more wider here. If I've got loads of paint on a brush, just wipe it off or clean it on a palette. So perhaps wider strokes for the outer shapes. Bring them in. They don't have to come out all in one stroke, okay? We can work within it afterwards. But if it happens and it comes in one stroke, that's lovely as well. That will stay flat somewhere there. The more strokes we do within the petal, within a flower, the more messy it will start looking. So if I need to correct the shape, I will just try to go over that stroke in one go. Okay, so it just gives me a shape. Okay, also bear in mind that this is quite an important flower for me, so I'm persevering. Also bear in mind that I can apply fresh white on top, so that's okay as well. And finally, there are loads of things going on, yes. We need to remember that these are fresh flowers. They're not dying, they're not hanging, and they, the end of their life. They're all drying out or getting saggy. They're quite perky, they're quite exciting, they've got that boldness and their freshness. So try to keep that in mind as well. Right, let's work into this lovely shape. So maybe exaggerate some of the kind of curvature to have that lovely effect. Okay. Don't be scared to go large. Okay, I think that one might just stay there. Might even soften that. Don't think I can see it as much, and I think it's will be better if I'll keep it that way. I'll bring my background color back. Okay. So use your colors, your brushes to support you. But I think there is a nice stroke somewhere here. Okay. And then so I'll spend a little bit more time on my maybe first group of flowers, just to give that confidence around the strokes, just to get a little bit of checking how the colors react together. And then I'm going to, so these are little marks behind my flowers of other shapes, of other flowers perhaps at the back. And then I'm going to go much more fluent and more spontaneous. Observed it, I looked for it. Now I can be more be relaxed and work into the shapes more smoothly. Okay, that's quite good. Topping up my paints so it stays fresh. And because these areas, remember we painted super early, the terps are not oily, and that gives that dry surface for me to work on now. Or partially dry, it's not going to be perfectly all dry. Okay, we had a little bud somewhere here. Maybe this is going to be the back of the flower. Can see that in the back. Maybe I see a bit more. So sometimes spontaneous marks gives us much more wonderful strokes than over precise. But try both. Try to do something quite specific earlier on, and then relax. That's lovely. Okay. I'm gonna paint these ones first, and I've taken them from here, maybe just the different versions. Petal shapes could change as you paint, so don't go for all the same scale. Sometimes we see the width of it, sometimes we see the side of it, sometimes we only see it in perspective looking towards us. The gaps between the leaves, between the petals change. Okay, and I wanted some more flowers this side. And if we plant them in this area, but it doesn't feel right for you, from whatever the colors you have now, it's okay to move them or not to have them there. That's your option as well. That's quite good. Right, anything else I want to add to more bolder colors of flowers? It looks like I can extend my branch here and perhaps even put a little flower here. I think that will work for me. So if I'll top up my white and cerulean, I think I can place a small, almost opening up flower, maybe a hint for it. Okay. And maybe, I think that was a leaf, but maybe I extend the leaf again. So I'm going a tiny bit more spontaneous with extra shapes. And perhaps in this corner as well. I'm going to start less loading my brush with fresh paint, and I want to have perhaps a little more flowers in this corner so they become more smudged and less they're present, but they're not. I'm not going to do any details to them. Okay, so those are going to be my distant flowers or flowers from other branches, and they can be slightly smaller as well. The kind of part of the background, is it the flower, is it part of that background? So allow the colors smudge and lose the feel for what's there. There's a bit of white almost like behind the tree. It's not behind the tree. I think there's a branch coming through, but I think it will work if I'll adjust a tiny bit of light there. Again, look for what might work for you. Do I want to bring another flower over the tree trunk or group of flowers? I might just stop that light kind of disappearing into kind of focusing over on a tree. I think that's looking quite good. I'm looking at my painting now rather than the photograph. I am looking at the photograph, but I'm looking for that buzz of exciting strokes and light. I think that's good. I think that's quite nice. Anything here? Just maybe to stop that branch staying in too much focus. I think I just lost that branch here. I think I quite like that. And perhaps some of that will be found partially. That's good. Not overly happy with the shape of the stem here. Can I create another smudgy flower in that corner? Okay. Anything goes. Yeah, that's all disappeared in the fog, but I do want a little definition. Can I put tiny fresh white in there? Okay. I just give that again connection and suggestion. That's great. Right, I need to do now some middles and some stamens. And then if we need to touch up a tiny bit of white, we can touch up some white as well. Now, because we've done big shapes of flowers, I think before we go into details of maybe my leaves need to come through now on our branches to kind of finally decide where the leaves are and also balance them with some of the highlights on the trees, that mossy green we had. So I'm going to go for some white and olive green. If you don't have olive green, we're using emerald green and some ochre. Okay. I need a darker version of it, maybe something like that first. I haven't quite used yellow today, like cadmium yellow, but if you need to, depends what type of olive green you have, you can use a tiny bit of extra yellow. Okay, so let's give that one a try. Yes, so that will be quite good. Okay, some lit up area. I think I need a tiny bit more darkness into that. Again, emerald green and violet will give you a better looking green than emerald green on its own. So there might be a bit of a darkness here. Let's find these shapes. Even if they will be partially lost, a hint of the leaves will be seen when we start when our eyes start wandering on a painting. They will become a little bit more sharper than our background colors. Okay, so we do want them partially being lost in that part of that environment, unless if you really want them to stand out, that's okay as well. I think it works for me here to keep them soft and not overly precise. And again, keep cleaning your brush if it's clogging up with the paint. Okay, anything here? I think that lovely green I already placed is working. Don't overdo it. I could have done with the petal somewhere here, with the leaf, sorry, not the petal. But I'm going to spoil my other flowers, so I'm going to leave it out. Or I'm going to bring it from elsewhere. There's not much green here, so maybe some of that will come in gently. Carefully working not to turn the painting now into a very decorative style. Although sometimes it's quite exciting as well. So try not to make it too perfectly the same. Still look for where the light and darks. Done with my violet. A couple of darker leaves. Maybe shape here. Maybe I need a leafy corner somewhere here. So I can see some leaves here, but I need it somewhere here to balance my green from the trees. So maybe that's how I pick that corner. And perhaps a lighter version of it, so I can see it better. Oh, it doesn't show on the screen as much. Okay. And also, I think I'm going to use this lighter green, a couple of touches of branches. I think they will look more natural as well. I think it just gives it a tiny bit more light. That lightish green, I think that works better. Good. Good, good, good. Well, let's tweak the middles of the flowers now. To work into them, kind of create the middles for the flowers, instead of placing, you can place the green, the pale green. We've got this little, almost like gaps where the flower center is, yeah. Or you can also just gently lift the color if it will lift. Okay, and then just will have a little bit of extra darkness. Sometimes it becomes more natural, especially if you have a lot of paint. So feel free to try both. A little bit of lifting. Yeah, you will see that darker background. You can always add a hint of green to that. But sometimes when we put extra dark, extra volume of paint in such delicate areas where we want it quite precise and quite thin and quite elegant, it becomes thick and overworked. So lifting with herbs, all the three oils is often a good decision. I'm going to make this one slightly wider as well first. And again, it's easier to put fresh paint on top of flatter surface or clean surface. So what I'm doing, I'm just lifting and wiping on my tissue a little bit more fresh. Herbs. And I might not make many middles, maybe just a couple of those, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, that might be enough. And then I'll go with my olive green, perhaps a little mark on the side, maybe not all of that area we white, but maybe on the side, or maybe a little dab. If we can see a flower which is partially open, that might be them. The base where how it's all holds together. Okay, if I'll put this on a tiny bit lighter, we'll see that little stem, that little light there. Okay, so only one suggestion of that green. Okay, and the stamens will come out. Sometimes it's easy to scratch them out, because our darker surface will lift it, and that will be, again, you have to have quite confident lines. If you don't like them, just bring them back, smudge it back, and give it another go. Maybe have smaller amount. Okay. And of course, you can also just do a thinner line. Just keep your brush quite flat. And if we work with a white paint, here I was working from center out, if you wanted a darker mark. But if you're working with lighter tones, we can just bring it inwards, and then the pigment we have on the painting, on the background, almost goes over our lighter strokes of the petals and become darker lines. Hope that makes sense. Okay, again, just have it idea, something tiny bit more wider with white or a bit of yellow. I think I'm gonna go with white just to keep the feel for the flower, not overworking it. Okay. Thick paint, but quite narrow. Keep wiping the brush so the brush keeps a sharp border. Okay. Sometimes even white on white is good, because you will see close the strokes and indentations, and that surface does show well. I think I'll put those ones a bit more close there. And that mingled rhythm rather than continuous line. Less is more. So try not to overdo them. So we'll work better here with whites and darks. Okay, just want that lovely light effect rather than in some places we'll just see this little tops of the stamens. So just changing them slightly directions without placing the lines. It will be enough to see what's happening, and that texture is enough. Okay. sure that one worked. So I'll just paint it over, or give it another go, or keep it more blank here. So that's okay. Make that decision, give it a go. Okay, that's gone. I just put a stroke so it's part of that environment still. And let's touch up anywhere we want some extra fresh white. Maybe not everywhere, but I can see a couple of petals which could benefit from my fresh strokes of very chunky white, because I've been working over them a number of times. So per each stroke, I'm loading the brush from fresh and then wiping it, so there's no extra residue of color. Gives extra volume to your flowers, and gives an opportunity to see where the extra light is going to be. So the bluish white becomes dark, and the fresh white now is shining. Okay, this is quite nice. It's not fully painted. I can top up, maybe put an extra white on higher part of the flower, just again makes it sing. Not forgetting to clean our brush. More fresh white at the base here. And if there were any extra buds, or you wanted to touch up any smaller shapes, don't quite like how it's going over the branch, so let's paint it over. Anything white here, I think we're more or less good to keep all the fresh whites in the center. Maybe just a nice chunky stroke. Mm-hmm. And I'm just stepping away from the whole painting and just checking anything else I've missed as a whole. Do I need to connect any of my branches? And maybe with just an off-white, just make that little decision, or create any other smaller connections off the branches. Okay, that's all fine here. If any other dynamics could come in. I think something tiny bit lighter, perhaps here. If you see some buds of like little dots of brown, or little beginning of the flowers, and you want to do that, that's great as well. If you'd rather not, because you've got enough things going on, that's absolutely fine as well. Those little junctions sometimes quite effective. Or there could be sometimes darker junctions. Pink lighter for me working well here, and I'm almost finishing. That one to get a little more lost, that's okay. Yeah, and I'm going to stop at that. I'm quite happy that I've done some of the flowers quite busy and some are left fluent and fresh. Some are a little bit more again playful. So just give yourself that tiny bit of freedom to create those strokes, to create the light and the softness around it. Sometimes it's good to do a little splash, a little bit harder with the oils, but I think I've got enough buzz going on for a splash. But that's sometimes also gives that little extra sharpness without doing too much details directly with a brush. So I hope you had fun and enjoyed painting a soft semi-abstract background and then working in much more sharper, preparing the surface, working as much sharper details at the front. Thank you very much for today, and I look forward to seeing your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks.
Thank you.
As far as the flowers, still got